Boom. We are. We're not
Rolling.
live, but we're rolling.
We're rolling.
We're
Rightio.
rolling. I'm excited about all the podcasts. I always say that before I do them, but this one's been. It feels like a long time in the making.
We've been discussing it a while, for sure.
So, J2SKE.
J2SKE. That's me.
J2SKE, the man. If you don't follow him on Instagram, he is a very, very talented graffiti artist
handsome.
in general. He's pretty attractive. I didn't know what he was. I didn't know what he is. He did. He flowed in like a cowboy.
Yeah, mate. Dressed like a fucking PE teacher from 1989. That's how I roll.
But it's
Low
fucking.
key.
I appreciate you coming on.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
It is I wish people could see what he just threw up a little piece on the wall, and I don't have a talented bone in my body when it comes to art. When it comes to art, I'm fucking useless.
Practice, bro.
It is practice, is it? But I feel like you kind of need it's obviously not genetics, but I feel like creativity in people is like you're either born with a creative trait, or you obviously can hone it, but I think creativity is also something you can be born with.
Oh, yeah, look. You know, there are people out there, definitely, from my perspective, people that I know that are just
Gifted.
intrinsically fucking gifted. They're just wildly talented people that put in zero fucking effort for anything and are just amazingly good at it. But I'm not one of those people. I'm a time man, you know,
Yeah.
like
10,000 hours.
Yeah, exactly. And for everything that I do, I try to, you know, work hard to get. If I'm interested in something, then I'm willing to put in the work to get to a level with it that I'm satisfied, that I can get the results that I want. You know, this is the thing. Like, some people are amazingly fucking good at just doing shit. You know, like Palmsy, you know Palms?
No.
Oh, fucking Palms. He's a legend. You know, he does amazing pieces, surfs rad, you know, he's a cool cat. But
South Australia. So I wasn't involved in like the graph culture when I was younger. We were talking about AOD and stuff, and shout out to Ozark and Chase and stuff off camera. And they were obviously always around at parties and stuff, and we knew of them, but I was never involved in that culture. But when so funnily enough, I got into graph because like 3 years ago, I watched Jizzo for the first time.
Yeah, right. Okay.
And I was like, he's a scumbag.
He's from Adelaide.
Yeah, he's from Adelaide originally. And I was like, it's a funny documentary and he's a bit of a wanker, but just the train thing kind of got me. I was like, oh, that's a bit wild.
Yep.
And then I got onto Ozark, did the podcast with him, and I was like just blown away. I was like, fuck, it's more than just cunts getting pissed and just it is that as well, but
yeah,
but it is that as well. But like, there is a lot more to graffiti and the culture.
Oh, much more
than just a group of lads getting smashed and doing illegal shit. Like, there is a lot of sentiment and art to it.
Well, it even goes back to just our basic instinct as humans to relate to our environment. So, you know, when you're talking about graffiti and graffito, the originality of the word itself, the origins of the word are Italian. Graffito, it means to mark on walls, you know, or mark. And people have been writing on shit since before the word even existed, you know, from the cave paintings.
The OG graffers, shout
The
out.
OG graffers, you know, like these dudes, I mean, you know, I'm probably going to get fucking blown up about this by, you know, making that association. There's some purists that are probably like, fucking full of shit. But the reality is there's a human desire to claim ownership and be remembered, you know. And this is where modern graffiti culture, to me, really started, was places where you had groups of, you know, at-risk youth and forgotten youth, and
it started, to my knowledge, sorry for cutting in, the culture blew up in New York, in
Philadelphia, I would say more.
Philly.
Yeah, I would say the origins of what we understand graffiti today, a lot of New York dudes, you're going to get fucking mail about this, but Philly to me is really kind of where what we understand as graph now, you know, bubble letters, semi-filled ins, you know, these early fucking trains getting painted and stuff. Philly's just as important as New York, if not more so. So, you know, the whole tacky 183 fucking history, I think it was just convenient for them to represent it that way. So, you know, that's why New York's got such a mention. I mean, New York has a very developed train system. You had a lot of social problems in the 70s that created this desire to have people's names be remembered and celebrated. But, you know, the whole idea of it really is a culture born from the forgottenness of youth and the lack of ownership and the lack of access to the privileges that, you know, mainly white kids kind of have, you know. So it's a very social, it's socially philosophical fucking background to the reasons why it sort of started. Now, you know, have we moved away from that? Well, yeah, of course, you know, time's
Everything
fucking
progresses.
going on, everything progresses. But, you know, realistically, these sort of subcultures come out of more of a necessity than a fucking, you know, just an idea to be like, oh, I'm just going to go and damage some shit. I don't think it ever started like that. And, you know, obviously that's the result, but I don't think it was ever really thought out that, oh, we're doing something bad or necessarily destructive. I think it was more about the voice, the importance of individuality and the individual voice coming through to be represented and remembered. And, you know, don't forget about us. We're here. We did this. We came through here, you know. And then that turned into a conversation. So dudes would be like, oh, there's fucking, you know, homeboy there. There's, you know, my cousin's girlfriend, you know. So you had these little groups of people that were leaving love letters to each other kind of thing, you know. They, not love letters, but, you know, they were leaving little messages. And that meant that they were, you know, seen as being like, oh, I went to this place at this time and this place at this time. And you had this conversation that started that was non-verbal, you know.
Yeah.
You had a situation where people were communicating that wasn't, you know, the standard communication channels.
And obviously, when you start writing names on things and people start writing names over things, that's when problems start.
Well, look, I mean, you know, the whole, you know, the temporal nature of graffiti.
We were talking about it a bit off camera, how like there's certain aspects of graph that you don't participate in and stuff, or you don't appreciate anymore, like the violence that can come along with that kind of lifestyle, because you only really paint legal walls. You strictly paint legal walls now.
Not strictly, but it's just like, I'm not, you know, the thing is, I got shit to do. You know what I mean? I've already got, you know, the constabulary aware of who I am. I've been through the system in that sense, and, you know, people will be like, oh, fucking, you toy, you fucking, you know, just not sticking it to the man and shit. I stick it to the man plenty of fucking ways. Like, you know, I'm not interested in that sort of shit, because to me, I don't think that collectively we can create a message and create change without kind of sticking together more. You know, this exclusivity of this and this and this and this discussion, we're not building anything with that. We're just tearing each other down. It's just tall poppy syndrome. And I think that's very dangerous, because we fucking started at zero. You know, like most kids that I know that are involved in this scene have a background pretty similar to me, you know, very, like, you know, single family parent, very poor, you know. I was growing up in the 80s with just my mum, you know. We were very broke. And sort of, I don't think you're elevating past holding yourself down when all you're doing is just douching on with fucking other cunts. Like, it's just pointless, you know. To me, I mean, it's just, yeah, I don't know. And like the capping, you know, I don't just. It's stupid. Graffiti's temporal. It's just meant to be there for the time that it exists and not, you know. Like, I've had fucking tons of pieces gone over in my time, capped, fucking drawn on, fucking legs and shit drawn on them, shit love letters written on there. Like, people are like, hey, fucking, you know, whatever, just stupid shit. And I'm kind of more amused about it than anything. It's like, you're just giving me another spot to paint. Like, I couldn't give a fuck. If I got a photo, and I've lost hundreds of photos over the years of, you know, like, either had flicks that I've done of pieces. Man, a lot of my legal pieces actually got lost in that way. But which is a hilarious story, and I'll tell you about it in a minute. But getting back to this idea of, you know, ownership of space permanently, I just think that's a bit of a moot point, realistically. You know, like, That's the sort of same attitude that the business owner that's fucking shitty with you gives you. You know, I own the building, you guys are little fucking pests, fuck off. It's like, you're just doing the same shit as they are. They're just reinforcing the exact same hierarchical fucking control that the system does. So you're part of the system then, you know, and then it's like... Well,
you're just creating your own system.
Yeah. You know, if some cunt caps your piece, go and fucking redo it.
Yeah.
Do another piece.
That whole poppy syndrome, I don't know if it's like it in any field. It just seems like it's a human race thing though, with any field, because I'm a big fan of MMA and mixed martial arts.
Yep.
There is a massive tall poppy syndrome in mixed martial arts in Australia, especially in Adelaide. Like no one really wants to see anyone do well for, like, there is obviously select gyms that are synergized and they work together very well, but there's a lot of gyms in Adelaide that do not want to see any other gym prosper.
Well, that's silly.
It's just stupid because it's good for the culture, it's good for the sport, puts South Australia on the map, puts Australia on the map, but people just have this thing in their head where they don't want other people to do better than they are.
That's an allegory for a wider argument, which is an argument that comes back to why society is in the shape that it is in right now. You know what I mean? Like, you know, we'll probably get into this a lot more later, but from a perspective of, you know, this scarcity mentality that people portray, that's all there is to it. Like, you know, that's a capitalist-driven imperative. You know what I mean? That to me is direct result of, if my gym's the best, I'm going to earn the most fucking money. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That is not a human trait.
Just monopolising the industry.
You know, that's not a human trait by any means realistically. Like, that is a trait that is manufactured.
Impressive. Your rolling's very impressive, by the way.
Oh, that's years of joints. I can't stop doing it now. I can't even roll a cigarette without rolling it like a fucking joint.
I was going to say, when you were rolling it before, I was like looking at the container. I was like, well, it looks just like tobacco.
Krug screws.
Oh, it's funny as. But yeah, it's just, I think that's just how people are just trained these days.
Well, it's a psychological fucking operation that's perpetrated on us by the system to fucking continue to hold us down. You know, this is the larger issue. And, you know, I'm kind of more interested in these aspects of conversations these days than I am talking about just my own shit and my own, you know, because I'm nothing really. We're all insignificant as fuck in the grand scheme of things. So when you get to the point where you're just like, my shit's the most important shit, you just got to fucking look at it and love it. Oh, fuck all that. You know, if my shit can link up with some other shit, that can link up with some other shit, can link up with some other shit, and we can fucking, you know, make a change, make a difference. And that's way more important to me than just being the dopest fucking dude around. You know what I mean? Like, I don't give a fuck. Like, my shit's my shit. I'll do it. If you like it, cool. If you don't, I don't give a fuck. I'm not scared about it. I'm not sad about it. I couldn't give a shit, you know. And years ago when I was heavily involved in, you know, the scene, you know, there's a lot of rules that graffiti kind of has. You know, whether these rules are they're completely constructed anyway. But, you know, these rules go into sort of where you come from, what the style of the local zeitgeist is. And like I was saying to you before, like the pre-internet era, you could tell where someone was from just by their pieces. You know, you go to Sydney, and Sydney Public is a style. And Sydney Public's fucking one of my favourite styles globally. Like, I love the shit. I fucking can't get enough of it. You know, there's amazing dudes in Sydney with this funky ass, just fresh style. It's so public, so readable and so dope. You know, so I know straight away, if fucking you paint like that, you're from Sydney. But now the internet exists. You know,
everything merges
you might
together.
Be from Ballarat and fucking painting this rad.
You might be from fucking Lithuania, and
exactly.
you saw a fucking video on YouTube of this style, and now that's the. Do you know what? That's the beauty of that's the internet accelerated, not just graffiti, everything.
Yep.
Because kids now can download. That's why every year sports are getting better and art's getting better. And you look at it. You look at some of these fucking artists now on Instagram with 200,000 followers, and you're like, you're better than anyone that lived 100 years ago. Like, you're better than in technicalities. Like, you're just technically, there might not be as much romanticism or history between it. Like, that's where you got to kind of. Art's really subjective.
Definitely.
Like, it's very subjective. Like, but the technical abilities of a 18-year-old kid now, because they've been able to download so much fucking knowledge into their brain from YouTube and Instagram and shit. They're just leaps and bounds, and they're pushing boundaries that never got pushed. I was watching a fucking hour of this guy's Instagram the other day. I scrolled through all of his shit. He's older. He just fucking breaks mirrors and he makes murals.
Righto.
Like, he breaks glass. He'll have
Sounds like some hell method shit.
Oh, no, it's in a gallery. Like, his shit would be worth millions. He does
right.
massive galleries, and he has, like, a massive, like, 1 meter by 1 meter mirror of glass, and he has a chisel, and he just breaks it, but he replicates these fucking perfect portraits.
Okay, right.
With the glass, and it's like, who the fuck? Like, it's just insane.
Yeah, so it's a technique-based...
It's a technique-based thing.
Practice. Look, talking about that, we have to look at something that's, very close to my heart, like skateboarding. When we were young, even videos were fucking very hard to come by. Most time, if you found a video shop that had, like, bloody Shack Me Not or something, which is probably not in the video shop, but, Animal Chin or some shit, that would be pinched. So we get magazines, and you've got one, maybe 2 or 3 frames of a trick, and the trick described. You had to fucking work it out from that. We had to put in so much effort because we never ever saw anything other than static. So when something's still and it's just described to you, to replicate it took 3 years. 4 years. Now, you see fucking...
Oh, bro, there's some fucking kids out there.
Oh, dude, I know. And it's because they've got the ability to see exactly how it is. Freeze frame. Where's that dude's foot on the board? What's the dude... Because skateboarding's all physics. If you don't understand the physics of it. And I mean, a lot of people probably are not thinking about skateboarding as like that. But realistically, anybody that can ride a board very good is a master of physics. And the ability to see that physics experiment frame by frame changes the game fucking completely. They've already been given the fucking how-to book, whereas kids like us that grew up, in the back in the day before this shit was just easily walk down the road and get it, we had to work very hard to do anything, everything. It was like that. We either had a homie that was just some fucking freak, like, I grew up surfing with a couple of dudes that were just still leaps and bounds above other fucking dudes, you know what I mean? They still surf phenomenally good, and you learnt from those dudes, you learnt from trial and error, you learnt from all these things, but we never had this, like, here it is handed to you on a plate, and that's why the development of all of these sort of things has just fucking gone through the roof, because people have the ability to start so much further along the process. Like, when Alan Gelfand invented the ollie, can you imagine the fucking change? It's like he changed the world.
Obviously, the boards and the technology of the... Actually, skateboards probably have remained relatively similar in the...
Reasonably.
It's a fucking piece of wood with 4 at the end of the day. There's a kid actually in Adelaide that's phenomenal, and I saw him like 3 years ago. I think he's sponsored by MV2. I'm not sure if he still is. Bodie. This kid Bodie,
yeah, right.
He was fucking tiny, man. He would have been like 11 years old, and he was just ripping, and it's like, what the fuck?
Yep.
It's like that Nigel Houston's been like a weapon since he was like fucking 8, just a prodigy.
A lot of those dudes probably have skateboarding parents.
That's the thing.
Like when you're brought up from 3 years old to be on a board, you've already got an inherent understanding of the mechanisms of that, device that far exceed anyone like, me or other dudes I know that were like, oh, skateboarding's fucking cool, but we were 12, we were 10, 12, you know what I mean? Like, so it's like learning how to walk. If you learn to walk fucking funky from the get-go, you're going to be a funky cat. Like, like you just fucking, if you learn to skateboard as early as that, then you're going to be a dope skateboarder. You're going to be a rad surfer.
I went down a huge skateboarding rabbit hole for a few years because I was like, this is just, it's so underappreciated as as a talent. Get on a board and just try and move it forward. If you've never done it, like, just try and move it forward without fucking falling off of it.
Yeah, well, that's it. But you've got to also understand why skateboarding is important, more so than the actual activity, is that skateboarding breeds community. Skateboarding was from the fucking punk kids. That was for the downtrodden youth. Skateboarding is graffiti.
Links, I was going to say, what brought you... Did skateboarding bring you to graffiti, or did graffiti bring you to skateboarding?
It actually did. Well, the weird thing is, like, when I was young...
Because they're in very like they're in very good harmony, those two cultures.
Because, like I said to you off screen, to me, and what's important about graffiti to me, is interacting with your environment in a way that is unexpected or not planned by the people that created the environment. So, graph and skateboarding are the same thing, realistically. I mean, obviously they're different outcomes, but the intent for those things, for a lot of people, not everybody, some dudes just want to fuck shit up, that's fine, is the same. It's a control of your environment, which is a basic human fucking imperative. That's one of the things that we require in our life. We need to control the environment and make ourselves safe and sheltered. We need food, water, and to continue the human race, whether that's good or bad. So skateboarding to me is that. That is just interacting with things that weren't made for that. That's what when parks started to get built, because you got to remember, like, I'm older than most skate parks, We didn't give a fuck about skate parks. It was a bit of a folly. Like, oh yeah, we can just go there and not get hassled. That was the main reason that skate parks were kind of cool. But is, that better or worse than just doing a 5-stair or finding a ledge or, back in the days in the 90s in Adelaide when, you had sort of the city skaters, they called them, dudes like Rao and Brian and Mark Mason and these rad dudes, beautiful guys. Like, we'd just, skate in the town and fucking hang out and, we'd be sessioning somewhere and these dudes would rock up and there was a community there. That was created from, we didn't fucking know these dudes outside of that. Like, but we knew them because we had a common interest. And that meant that, this thing flourished because over the time you collect more people. Now, skateboarding's always been the sort of pastime, and this is why I think they find it so hard to commercialise in any meaningful way, thank fuck, that people that are excluded from other things, like football culture or you being the smartest kid at school, these weird kids, these odd kids that have just got no real place to fit, they will always be accepted in skateboarding. Always. Because skaters inherently understand that what they're doing is outside of society from the jump. You fucking old lady yelling at you, shaking her fist and shit. Like, that's the same response she's going to give to anybody, whether you're the, rad cat with all the threads or you're just the, some poor kid that's just got a skateboard. Like, so this is what has maintained the integrity of skateboarding for all these years. I mean, look, they're trying to get in there. They did it to surfing. Surfing's fucked. Like, WSL, pro surfing to me is a joke. Like, I look at that and just go, this is fucking idiotic. And, they've tried to get their fingers in pie in skateboarding. You've seen bigger companies come in and put money into it and try and buy into the subculture. But the subculture will always remain separate from that. Skateboarding's two different things now. You've got these... The
competitive side and the street culture.
Exactly. You've got kids that skate because it's community, and then you've got kids that, I can see this as a way to...
Athletes. The more athletic side of it.
Or an opportunity to elevate their position. Like African-American kids might want to play football or basketball, to get the fuck out of their current environment. That's their ticket to freedom. And for skateboarding, that's also very interconnected with what really skateboarding is at the core and soul of the culture.
You would have been right in the thick of it when Taz and his brother were coming up.
Yep, I did.
Oh my God, that would have been a wild time to see that unfold in fucking real time. I just watched all this mayhem relatively recently because I've been trying to... I'm in talks with Eddie, I believe his name's Eddie Martin, who made Jizzo and all this mayhem.
Yep.
To try and get him on the podcast.
Yeah, nice. That'll be interesting. That'll be cool.
Fuck, that is a wild story.
Yep.
Those two were so talented.
Yes, very much so.
Insane. It is a shame what happened, but fuck, that's just how the cookie crumbles when you give two kids that come from like a low income, underprivileged area. You fly them out at 16 to America. They're hanging around these real high octane motherfuckers feeding him drugs. Like, that's just how it was never going to end well.
No, it wasn't. You know, and that's exploitative.
Destined for failure.
That's actually, you know, those stories. They're a dime a dozen. You know,
destined for it.
That's the exploitation of talent that the system does. You know, it's like child actors. It's the same fucking shit. You know, you're only good to us while you can be the face of our company, while you can be...
It's fucking grooming.
It's exactly. It's
straight up grooming.
It's grooming. And we're
going to fly you out. We're going to give you $50,000 in the fucking 90s. We'll treat you like an adult. You can take all the drugs you want. You just got to skate all day, do what you love all day. They're fucking grooming you. Yeah. That's what they're doing.
Exactly. Just for the one thing to exploit you.
And then when you're done... fuck off.
Well, look at Gator. You know what I mean? Like the Gator story. Like, you know, so many people just celebrate the fucking mythos surrounding Gator. Fuck Gator. He killed his bloody missus. Like,
wild.
You know, it's like the 80s was a fucking wild time for skateboarding. Like, you know,
it's cocaine fueled.
Well, there's a lot of heroin.
Acid, heroin.
A lot of heroin in skateboarding and stuff at that time, and that ruined many, many, many fucking careers, man, because this hedonistic lifestyle, which that kind of punkness and that ability to just be free was very desirable. It is very desirable. And you got to talk about the political climate of the 80s as well. You know, we're talking about the rise of capitalism, Wall Street, you know, and then the fucking ass fell out of the end of it and just left people devastated. And that's how you ended up with kids like me from the 90s that were... miserable cunts listening to Nirvana, like, you know,
what a time to be alive, though.
We kind of
time to be alive.
We kind of had collectively, globally, without ever being in contact with each other, this malcontent with society, and that's what made, you know, to me, like, Nirvana's a punk band. I don't give a fuck what anyone says. This grunge bullshit, like, whatever, you know. A lot of those bands to me are punk bands because they have punk ethos. You know, punk isn't a sound. Punk is a state of mind.
It's a movement.
It's an idea. You know, the punk ideology existed before the music. You know, and grunge is a marketing tool. You know, really, and this music allowed us to have an escapism from our reality, which was, you know, shit going pretty bad. You know, there was not a lot of opportunities employment-wise. There was very little money in the economy. And this is the same sort of system that set up places like Philadelphia and New York to have their little cultural fucking time in the sun because they had the same thing. I mean, it was much worse for them, of course. Plus, you had the white supremacy involved in keeping these people deliberately fucking subjugated. But the 90s were, you know, it was a pretty bleak time ideologically. You know, not that great things didn't come about of it. You know, I look back on it quite fondly, but the reality was it was...
Everyone was scrambling. It was just a scramble to kind of get...
Scrambling very slowly.
Yeah.
Like, you know, everyone was ambling.
Yeah, for 10 years.
Everyone was fucking ambling along and, you know, there wasn't a lot of idea about the future. But we still had opportunities. I look at the kids now and I'm actually pretty sad about where society's gone.
Oh, they're fucked.
Because
they're so fucked. But not them, just that they're living in the easiest time ever, but also the worst. Like, it's probably the easiest time to be comfortable and like live, although Australia at the moment is going through a fucking insane recession that no one's fucking talking about.
You're very right.
But
you're very correct.
Yes. It's like everyone's acting, oh, it's fine.
It's manufactured.
It's fine.
It's manufactured for
Australia is fucked right now.
Well,
financial. I went to the shops the other day. Like it's a serious fucking issue. Like Woolies and that are fucking raping everyone.
I agree. I 100% agree.
I went and buy rice, chicken, and fucking mushrooms, and
like
I got
$40.
I got washing powder. It's $75 fucking dollars.
Yep.
75, and that's just for one fucking person.
And that's manufactured scarcity. Like what a lot of people are unaware of is that, you know, when I talk about community and grassroots movements, we have to collectively bring these systems down, and that's an important one that you're talking about there, because that is the result of a fucking unchecked, unfettered capitalistic intent that we're all victims of. And while we're infighting, while we've got people that are just like fucking, you know, my ideas trump yours. We've got all this individualism, you know, this libertarianism going on where people are like, you know, my rights are more important than everyone else's. That creates no community. And that individually, we can't do fucking one thing besides just go in Coles and steal. And fuck Coles. You know what I mean? If you want to rob, if I knew dudes that were like robbing, I'd be like, go rob Coles. Rob the servo. Fuck those dudes. You know what I mean? Don't rob the fucking Ma and Pa shop.
Yeah.
Don't rob the bakery. You know what I mean? Like, I want to see those dudes suffer because they're an arm of this very well-funded, strong, militarily and police-backed system that needs to fall because it is causing all the issues in the world today are caused by the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, people talk about, the deep state. You know, you get some fucking cult figurehead like Donald Trump, you know, who's a fucking cockhead, like straight up and down. The dude's an asshat. You know what I mean? He's just a piece of shit. And when dudes like that get a fucking voice and they get a platform, they start saying things like, I'm here to bring down the deep state. You are the deep state, motherfucker. You think the deep state is some clandestine office where these dudes check in and check out every day? Nah,
If you're part of the cog.
Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah.
Those cunts have names. They have addresses. Go fucking get them. Remove their fucking heads. You know what I mean? You want the deep state, you're looking at it. I'm deep state talking to you fucking on this podium with shit in my pants and being a fucking pest. Like Trump, all those dudes. Biden administration's the same. Democrats are not a fucking left-wing party. They're full of shit. Labor here, not a left-wing party. The ghosts of fucking Gough Whitlam are well fucking gone, mate. Like, Labor is a neoliberal fucking get-up, the same as Liberals are, and it's just how leery you want your fucking right-wing politics.
It really spins me out when people think who they vote in is going to matter.
No, of course not.
It's not going to matter at all because the person you're voting in is just a mouthpiece for fucking whatever's going on in the... And this isn't... I'm not trying to get and delve into fucking conspiracy and put like a tinfoil
Well, it's
hat
not
on.
a conspiracy.
It's like...
You're 100%
it's
right.
legit. It's like... It's hilarious that people get so... Oh, I need to vote Labor because of this and I need to vote Liberal because they're going to fucking do this. Like, no, they're not. They're not going to fulfill any of the policies that they sucked you in. They just groomed you into fucking voting for them. So now this party has more power than this party, so they're making more money than this party. That's all. It's just they're just putting on a show so they can get a pay rise. Pay rise.
Money is the god.
Yeah,
Money is the god to our current system. We live in a capitalist system, which is, you know, the capitalism itself is our enemy. What people have to understand is that until we can get out from underneath the yoke of capitalism, everything else is irrelevant, realistically. You know, we can work out the other problems later, but while capitalism exists as a system, as a systemic fucking control paradigm over all of us, these people are the mouthpiece of capitalism, and they're neoliberal as fuck, and that is the current system we exist under. And while these people are allowed to remain unchecked, they're only going to uphold the hegemony that is that system. So we are really the cogs in the machine that feed money upstream to this fucking deep state. Fuck the deep state. You know, like Jeff Bezos and shit. Like, they're the dudes that are the people that are capitalism. Larry Fink, you know, Larry Fink is the head of BlackRock. These people in these positions, they want you to think there's a deep state because it takes the fucking focus away from them just in the open, standing there being like, I'm fucking blatantly stealing from you and I'll run you dry. You know what I mean? And we've seen this with colonialism, mercantilism. Historically, you know, once feudalism kind of got overthrown by capitalism, mind you, and it took 600 years for this transition to occur, it put us at the control of these people with money. So we swapped out feudal landlords who actually probably, as cunty as those dudes were, at least they had a responsibility to keep their workers sheltered and fed and clothed. You know, we've gone from feudalism to feudalism with zero responsibility. The shift has been zero. The same motherfuckers that own this shit here own this shit here. The same family lineages, you know, and the same white supremacy. Capitalism is a tool of white supremacy. They're interlinked fucking ridiculously. You can't separate the two. You look at the problems globally that occur. The hegemony that creates these problems does so for one reason, and that is to oppress a group of people to fucking steal their wealth and reinforce their position at the top of the table.
Do you know what's fucking crazy? I remember seeing I wish I had a producer so they could bring this up on fucking TV. I seen a picture the other day of, I can't remember the company name, but say one company, whatever it's called, that's the main company.
Yep.
If you go down the chart, down the tree, that company owns Coca-Cola, who owns this, who owns that, who owns fucking this group. It's one person. Like one.
Well, it's not one person.
It's one group.
It's one group.
It's one group, and they
all own each other.
And they all own each other.
That's
and
right.
Then that group owns this fashion company, which owns Versace, which owns fucking Dolce & Gabbana, which owns fucking Red Bull, which owns NBC, which owns it. So they can push any fucking narrative they want. So they're all arguing with each other.
This is what shareholders are bullshit. I look at shareholders, and especially shareholders that get mouthy about, the current cost of living crisis. Can't you, with your fucking desire to get dividends from another person's labour? This is the problem we have here, that labour is not celebrated. Capital is celebrated. So you got cunt with money that buys into a business, does zero, and expects money to come out of that business into their pocket. So if you're a shareholder and you whinge about the price of living crisis, you're a fucking hypocrite, flat out. Fuck shareholders. Fuck all those shareholders. I couldn't give a fuck about those dudes because all they're doing is trying to make their life better by exploiting other groups. And, this is why, my political leanings, I'm fairly communist, realistically. Anarcho-communist.
But communism, the word has a real stigmatism to it.
Well, because we've had 100 years
Original communism is left. Is a lot left-leaning. Like
communism is a left-leaning.
But the word's been stigmatized heaps.
Because they've had 100 years of the CIA and people like this actually creating a behind-the-scenes psychological operative to create stigma. The only thing the US fears is communism because the US fears community. And it's in the fucking name. Communism is community. And the US knows, because the US is the tool of the capitalist system, if people can collectively get together, especially blue-collar people that work, because that's where the money's at. The labour is the only value the system really has. Labour is all there is. You know what I mean?
The rest is fictional, made-up shit.
That's right.
Like all e-commerce and...
it's all bullshit.
It's all... And like... Essentially, fucking labour's the only thing that keeps the world ticking. Everything else is just an extra added comfort.
Why do you think slavery existed? Because they wanted labour for free so they could exploit it to go on. Why do you think slavery ended? It wasn't because of altruism. They had a fucking industrial revolution. That had more to do with the end of the fucking slavery than bloody anyone thinking, we should probably stop doing this. They still do this bullshit to this day. It's not like slavery ever ended.
Well, even... I'm not one to fucking get on my high horse and be like, you shouldn't buy this product and you shouldn't buy this product. But anyone that just goes online and rants and has this fucking virtue signaling about fucking this and that on their iPhone, you're fucking contributing to slavery. I'm contributing to slavery by using my fucking iPhone every day. Have you seen those factories? Those Foxconn factories where they fucking had to put nets outside of the building because people were fucking jumping out, committing suicide so much because of the working conditions?
You've got to be careful about tarring China with a brush like that, man, because...
I'm not tarring... I've heard it's a beautiful country.
No. I'm saying that what created... When I was a kid, China was fucking as developed as Murray Bridge, mate. It was a shithole. And China's had a beautiful thousands and thousands of years of culture. Don't get me wrong. I'm not disparaging their cultural importance. But in the 70s, when I was born, up to the 80s, China was just a rural backwater. You know what I mean? And the West's desire to get their products made cheaper made China what it is today. So the capitalist intent of the system sent cunts like Nike, like Apple. They all went to Asia, Southeast Asia. They went to South America. They went to places in Africa to exploit the workforce for cents on the fucking dollar. And that's why all the factories in America closed, because they didn't want to pay American workers. That's why factories here closed, because they don't want to pay Australian workers a livable fucking wage to do their product, because the profit margin isn't as good. Now, the profit margins were already fucking fine, but greed and shareholders have forced them to make the imperative of their business to get that money and distribute it to people that do none of the labour. You know what I mean? So the system is designed to take money from the people that do the fucking work, and fuck them. They are just completely unimportant. Dude drops dead on the fucking line. Next day, they got another dude there because he needs to keep his family fed. You know, his mum's here strapped to a fucking sewing machine.
When there's a billion people, you're more scrambling for the money.
That's right. Plus, they don't have the labour laws. They don't have these controls that the West had already started implementing in their own factories. So, you know, Nike's a big one, because Nike was one of the companies that, you know, they used to manufacture all their own shit. Now, Nike owns no machines. They own no workforce. Nike owns a brand. And they just buy a product, put their brand on it, and sell it at a grossly marked up cost.
It is fucking insane.
And this is across the board, because the capitalist imperative is to maximise profits above all else. And that comes above everything. Look at fucking Detroit. Their water's been poisoned for what, 25, 30 years now. They could fix the water in Detroit. They're on the fucking bank of a massive fucking lake, for fuck's sake, you know? But they won't, because it's easier for them to make money out of selling them bottled water than it is to just go and dig up the pipes, or even just run new pipes.
Detroit's a fucking great example of, like, because they had some of the best fucking car. I'm pretty sure Detroit was like the car hub of America. They had so much industry, and then they pushed it out, and then it became, I don't know if it's doing better now, but
well, like a lot of those places, they sort of start turning into alternate avenues.
There's no industry there.
There is no industry. Now, there's a twofold reason why that occurred. So after World War II, the world was fucked. And this is what a lot of my art is about, this period in history where we do live in a simulacra. Because after World War II, 60, 80 million people dead globally, places are bombed to fuck, you know, everyone's scared as shit, nobody knows where their next meal's coming from. So what they did was they got together and said, we need to manufacture comfort. So we have to come up with an idea that allows us to get the world back on track. So this idea of a 1/4 acre block with the 2.5 kids and the dog and a new car, that was the bait. That was a purely invented fucking reality, you know, suburbia. And it took the period from about, you know, late 40s to about 1955 to get the manufacturing back to a level where it could support the population. And then for that period from 1955 to the mid-70s, under the capitalist system, that was the most prosperous time in human history. Mm. But it was so prosperous that the people that they didn't want to prosper started to prosper. You had African-American families living in a home next to some fucking white dude, you know, leave it to beaver cunts. You had bloody South American dudes, you know, owning their own truck, you know. And when you've got a population that has control of their own destiny, when they're financed, it's a lot harder to be exploited when you're comfortable. So when they remove those comforts, they can turn around and be like, I'll give you $3 an hour to sell my fucking coffee. Well, I'm not making any money now, and my kid needs fucking shoes. So I'm going to go and do that job. So the system realised that this flourishing of the middle class during that period was really bad for their bottom end. You know, we had 90% of the money going to the middle class, and they had Keynesian economics, which meant that people that were very wealthy had to pay extremely high tax rates. So not only did you have heaps of money coming from the top down back into the system, like Milton Keynes was an English economist, and he devised this system basically to bring the bottom up, which Adam Smith, the father of capitalism, in his book, he discusses things about this. You know, he hated landlords and all this bullshit too. It's just been bastardised to benefit the few. Now, Keynesian economics meant that you had all of this money being poured back into social shit, healthcare, schooling, fucking roadworks, all this stuff. And they realised, while we're giving this shit to these plebs, we're going to fucking take this cash. So they started to remove protections for workers. They started to take away opportunities that these people had to better themselves. And, you know, obviously the first people that were hit by these situations were the people they deemed lesser, i.e. people that weren't white. And they had a flow-on effect. So by the time trickle-down economics was introduced, you know, the manufactured stagflation crisis in the late 70s introduced trickle-down economics, fucking your old mate Ron Reagan and Thatcher, the fucking cunt. Both of them, they hope they're burning in fucking hell. They basically created a system where it was legal for, if you're wealthy, to just get wealthier. And this is the rich get richer, the poor get poorer paradigm started, you know, basically around 1980, the end of the Carter era, you know. And I was born, I'm older than that shit. You know what I mean? The 70s was a wild time. It was fucking freedom shit.
I'd say the 70s and 80s would have probably been the most wild. Like, or not wild. What's happening now with like the internet and stuff is pretty insane, but the 70s and 80s probably would have been like the most in limbo time.
Well, the 80s was a little bit different to the 70s. You're talking about overnight a complete shift.
Yeah.
And I mean, we saw this with COVID. When the government started being like, we're going to pay you a job keeper or whatever it was, that's Keynesian economics. You know what I mean? They're helping the community to be able to keep the community functioning. And that's what the whole system was designed to do.
They're fucking making everyone pay for it now, though.
Well, that's right. But, you know, the 70s, the interesting thing about the 70s was, you know, you've come off the back of the anti-war movement, you've come off the back of the civil rights movement, and people were as free as they're ever going to be. They want to ride a motorbike, play in a fucking rock band, bloody let their hair grow, drink a beer, meet some Sheilas. That's how they rolled, you know what I mean? It was free and easy. But the problem was that education was free up until basically that point. You know, so you had kids that were poor kids going and getting college educated, and they were dangerous to the government. So the government is like, we can't have all these fucking rabble-rousers out here, very much like what's going on now, but we can't have all these rabble-rousers out here telling us that what we're doing in Vietnam is bad, which it was all bullshit.
Vietnam was fucking heinous.
It was, but that's a war against communism. So, you know, this is, again, a part of the puzzle that goes into understanding why most people have this, what I call a McCarthyist hangover, is that you mention the word communism to a person, they nearly want to fucking punch you in the mouth then and there, because they've been so indoctrinated to thinking that communism represents everything bad in the world that they can't understand that the answers to their fucking problems, anyone that's standing there going, oh, big corporations, big pharma, fucking, you know, the answer to that shit is fucking communism. Flat stick, that is it. That's the complete opposite to what they're talking about. But they're so fucking confused intellectually duped.
They put a stigmatism on the word, so whenever anyone mentions it, it's like you're saying a dirty word.
It's a dirty word.
It's a dirty word.
It's a dirty word.
They've trained people from a young age, like you hear communism, you're like, oh, that's not good, it's Hitler. Like,
well, Hitler was a fascist. They're opposing
but like,
ideological.
It's fucking like people don't know the actual meaning of, you know, of communism, but like you said, it's in the fucking word. It's community driven.
Yeah, well, mentioning Hitler's a funny one because a lot of people are adamant, you know, because in their name they were called the Nazi Socialist Party. They think they were socialists, which is a left-leaning political ideology. But they were fascists. Now, fascists are the system. The system now is fascistic because fascism aligns itself with corporations. Fascism aligns itself with top-down control. See, when people think about communism, they go, oh, Russia, you know, they fucked all these people up. Well, Russia never actually instilled proper communism themselves because they still had a hierarchical structure. And the reason that happened was because when the Bolshevik Revolution went down, the fucking introduced a completely untested, untried system without really doing it right. You know what I mean? You got to understand the book for communism, the ideology around communism was a 19th century invention. 60 years later, they're fucking putting this into practice. Capitalism took 600 years to get to the point where it could overthrow feudalism, and these dudes had an idea and just implemented it on a massive population, a third of the fucking world almost, overnight. And you've got to think like, yeah, they're going to make mistakes. You know what I'm saying? And those mistakes are fucked, don't get me wrong. But this, you know, there's this rumour, you know, it's not a rumour because it comes from a book, but it's been disproven that communism killed 100 million people. It's the BBC, Black Book of Communism. And authors from that book, it was written by a group of intellectuals, have come out since and been like, look, yeah, this dude was one of our homies and he wanted to hit the magic number. So they were counting fucking dead Germans in the World War II. They were counting motherfucker just fell off his pushy and died. Like, they were putting everyone into it as victims of communism. And, you know, the right uses this argument constantly. Oh, communism killed 100 million people. Motherfucker, 3.5 million people die in the world every year to this day from dirty fucking water alone. You know, capitalism's killed billions of people.
Meanwhile, use the fucking manufacturing wars in the Middle East.
Well, that's a deliberate thing because the war upholds the hegemony. Everything's linked. See, this is something that people really need to start thinking about, that when you get involved in coalface politics, which is politics that are there, like if you can't see, pull the camera back a bit and start seeing things as a system, that everything is linked, then you're just pissing into the wind. You know, if you're just worried about this one issue and not understanding that this issue was caused by this and this issue has a flow-on effect to this, then you're never going to break the system. You're never going to make change because you're not actually seeing the big picture. The best book I ever read was this book called Freakonomics. And it's not really about any of this shit, but it's an economist or a couple of economists wrote it. And the way they discuss it was about how small things have bigger flow-on effects. It's an amazing book, very easy to read, very interesting, and the examples they use...
Freakonomics.
It's called Freakonomics. It's an amazing book because it didn't so much teach me anything about what was going on. Yeah, they were cool little anecdotal stories, but the reality, what it did for me was it allowed me to start seeing patterns of bigger picture ideas. So instead of being like, oh, fucking, we need, you know, to burn down Woolies, right? We need to understand what makes Woolies, what gives Woolies the power to be able to treat us the way they do, you know? And when we can uncover these interlinked things, then we can go to the head of the snake and cut that shit the fuck off. You know what I mean? We can't be just here pissing around in the weeds, like writing on the window of Woolies, oh, you fucking scum. Like, they don't give a fuck. But if you go up and you knock out the top players, you remove their ability to control the market and the people, then that's where you get real change.
You also got this thing, though, when you cut off the head of the snake, there's just a power vacuum and someone else is going to take it over and they might be even more of a fucking cunt. It's just such a slippery slope.
I don't... You know, I can't get involved in just thinking of what ifs, hypothetical fucking future problems.
Nothing will
change.
We
have a bad fucking problem now, and we know that. So whatever change we can, begin and attempt. If it gets worse, then we'll fucking do it again. But we're not doing it now. You know, we haven't tried it. You can't just be like, oh fuck, this experiment that I haven't tried is definitely not going to work. That's fucking not scientific. And this is the problem. People don't think about things in scientific ways anymore. You know, everything's opinion now. And they actually have the audacity to be like, my opinion is as valid as your fucking science. Provable fucking information. No, it's not. If you can prove something, this is why I fucking hate religion. If you can prove something, then your feelings or your sentiment regarding that coming from a completely opposite situation, that's fucking moot point. It's irrelevant. Stop putting yourself into conversations where you fucking have no idea about what you're talking about.
I'd love to hear everyone's opinions on the AstraZeneca now.
Well, you know...
everyone was a fucking doctor during COVID. Every single fucking person you'd talk to was a fucking doctor during COVID.
I'm vaccinated. Happily.
You are?
Happily.
Yeah, I got one of them because as soon as they said that you wouldn't be able to travel, I fucking buckled straight away.
Well, it's not even about that for me. You know why? Because my background, my fucking whole existence is punk as fuck. And punk is about community. And when I sat there and looked at it and went, some cunt's going to lose their grandma over
because
this.
Of you, yeah.
Over this. Or some kid's not going to wake up tomorrow. Then we've got to collectively get together no matter the risk and just take the fucking risk. Now, the other thing is, I studied science in the 90s. I went to Flinders. And mRNA vaccines at that time it was before they had worked out that they need a lipid to inject the strand into so the body could read it. You know what I mean? If they injected it straight in the body.
You did science in the 90s?
Yeah. I went to Flinders for 2 years.
And you did fucking art school. You fucking dabbled in a bit, eh?
I've done a lot of shit. I was a chippy before that.
I just thought I was fucking inviting a graffer over and we were going to smoke some cones or something.
Well, if you got them, I'm going to drive, but I'll take some home and smoke it later. No, I was a chippy before that. So, you know, when I was studying science, there was a lot of backroom chatter about mRNA vaccines, because what an mRNA vaccine does is allow medicines to be applied to the body directly for a specific thing. So they knew how the mechanism worked, they just couldn't work out how to get it into the body without the body just instantly destroying what they were trying to get it to do. So, you know, I had brilliant minds at Flinders University talking about, you know, if they're ever going to find a cure for cancers, for AIDS, all of these things, that is the future of medicine, mRNA vaccines. Now, I don't care what anyone says. They can be as fucking, you know, oh, I told you at the start, fucking, it was all bad. You know, like AstraZeneca, it causes fucking problems. We know this.
What problems does it cause?
Well, as far as I know, it causes a bit of clotting and shit. So it's creating solids within the blood that are causing embolisms and things like that.
AstraZeneca is the one they were giving to higher risk or elderly people?
Well, it's because it was one of the first vaccines that kind of made it out the gate.
I never pretended to. The thing is, I never pretended to be an expert on fucking COVID. But it was just hilarious on both sides. It was the non-vaxxers were fucking just as bad as the people that were trying to fucking jab you everywhere. Like, it was like it's like anything. Both, when you have an extremist in any fucking thing, it's terrible.
Well, look, you know, there is a massive distrust of Big Pharma, and understandably so, because they've created a financial imperative to health. And this is why health should be social. Completely. They should not have any private interest in health. You look at someone like J2SKE, who invented the polio vaccine. He didn't fucking take that down the copyright office and get a patent on it, because he knew that it was going to benefit society.
It's going to fucking save the world.
So he gave the shit away for free, and then later along, someone walked in, fucking, I don't know, Pfizer or one of these cunts, and went, oh, there's no bloody patent on this, we'll patent it ourselves. That's cunt shit. So you've got a financial imperative to give people medication and whatnot, and rightly so. Don't trust the government. Of course not. Fuck those dudes. They haven't got your best interest at heart. They've got the interest of the people upstairs at heart. So I understand why there was a lot of kickback against things like this, especially a new idea. Not that mRNA vaccines were a new idea. They'd been around for a very long time prior to COVID, and I believe they'd even been used before with SARS or MERS. But you know, when people have a distrust for the government, but they don't know why they distrust the government, it's just a vibe, the vibe of it. You know, Dennis DeVuto fucking shit.
I'm not feeling this right
You
now.
know, this seems fucking iffy. You know, mind you, they'll go and fucking get
Smoke
googs
crack
from a fucking bikie and be like, I'm going to fucking eat these. And I'm not disparaging bikies either.
No, but that's so true.
You know,
it's all like, I'm not getting that, but I'm going to go home, I'm going to get my pipe, I'm going to put some crack in it, and then I'm going to smoke it. But
exactly.
Fuck the government. It's
yeah.
That to me just baffles me. Like, yeah, I'll fucking smoke some fucking fly spray and some gasoline, but I won't put that in me.
Well, this is the thing. And, you know, like I said, you know, they started charging for uni to stop unrest. So gradually over time, since they've introduced a fucking paid university system, people that weren't privileged, so people who weren't from the system, the kids of the cunts that had the money, they started to get a little bit dumber and a little bit dumber and a little bit dumber. You know, it was a deliberate ploy. It was a complete fucking manufactured foolishness. You know, I don't want to use ableist language like dumb and shit. That's not fair. But the reality of it is that society has deliberately been kept moronic, unfortunate term, but so that nobody is aware of where the real fucking enemy lies. You know what I mean? And with things like medication and stuff, which is super complex, you've got to understand the medical field is not just black and white. It's not just, you know, things that average people can understand. There's a reason that those courses take 8 years to get into and shit, like, you know, to work through, because when you start talking about things at these levels that are just beyond molecular, you know, we're talking about just these tiny little bits that are super complex. There's, you know, so many moving parts to things. And just average Joe like fucking Barry down the TAB with his big opinions. It's like, just shut the fuck up, dude. You can't even fucking get your car home half the time, like you dumb fuck. Shut up, just get on with it. So I understand why people were frightened, and I get that. You know what I mean? But the reality of it is, from my perspective, was that if there was a potential that, like I said, it could save your grandma, then my risk is not the utmost importance. My risk is minimised. You know what I mean?
Take one for the team.
I take one for the team because that's community.
Do you think... I don't think so, but do you think COVID was manufactured, or do you think it was just monetized very quickly as soon as they realised it was going to fucking hit the fan?
I think COVID scared the fuck out of the government because...
They found a way to monetize the fuck out of it. They figured out how to navigate their way through it to make themselves fucking come out of it a lot better.
They did, but why I think it actually scared the government so much was that they need workers. And if you've got an epidemic or a pandemic that is out, like the Spanish flu, you know, they acted the same during the Spanish flu.
What a wild time that was.
They just kept that going for fucking years. They couldn't give a fuck. But the problem is they started losing too much workforce, and then they were like, oh, we got a problem on our hands. So I think it actually scared the fucking system, like, to act. Because the last time I can think of any global cooperative government interference in any of this shit going on in the world was when CFCs were removed from aerosol cans. You know, do you know about that?
No.
In the 80s, there was like a hole in the fucking ozone layer, right? The ozone layer was thinning, and it was due to chlorofluorocarbons being put inside aerosolized products. So it was one of the active ingredients in hairspray, fucking WD-40. Like, it was just in everything. There was aerosol.
And it
so
was thinning the ozone layer.
And they worked out that what it was doing was fucking with, I'd say it was ozone. Because ozone's a very complex molecule. It's 3 oxygen molecules bonded together. It's formed by lightning. It's a real weird shit. Anyway, so what the ozone does is create the greenhouse that allows us to thrive and all species on Earth to thrive. It traps enough heat, but it lets enough light and heat out. It creates this balance. That's why anybody that's like, oh, I'm fucking a climate denialist is a fucking moron. They don't understand how things work. They can't, you know.
The climate sketches me the fuck out.
Well, look...
That's one thing that, like, I can't go into rabbit holes with it because I start fucking stressing out.
Yeah, it's stress-worthy. You know, so what happened was they realised that these CFCs were bad shit, and then they banned them globally. Within a few years, everyone was like, right, we're going to do something about it. And everybody around the world agreed, we've got to fucking stop putting this shit in products. And they did. So you had a global harmony of fucking people working together for the future of humankind. You know, and not humankind, just everything. Now, the thing with the COVID vaccine and shit, you know, they kind of already had it there. Oh, your question was about whether I think it was manufactured. Look, maybe. I mean, That's a big mistake to stem from a wet market in fucking Wuhan, man. Well, look, you know, unfortunately, I just think that played into their dogmatic fucking reinforcement of, you know, the United States fucking greatness. This shit could have broken out in fucking Tail and Bend. And then would it have been like, oh, Australia, they wouldn't have talked about it. Because China is an inconvenience to the United States. You know what I mean? They had to make a massive deal about how fucking China let this out. Look, if it fucking broke out in Texas, it would have broken out in Texas. It could have come from fucking Ecuador. You know what I mean? It'll happen again as well. The more we interfere with the environment, the more we drill into the permafrost or it melts, the more we go fucking around doing shit we shouldn't be doing. These things will keep occurring, you know. And as a novel virus, which is a virus that we don't have a genetic immunity against, I don't know if you understand how genetic immunity works or whatever.
Oh, fuck no, but I don't know. It's way above my pay grade.
Right. Well, since the start of humanity, we've ran into these different things over time. You know what I mean? Different viruses, different bacterial things. And because of the generational nature of evolution, we've built up an immunity, which actually becomes a part of our DNA makeup. Now, what a novel virus is a virus we've never encountered before. So a virus that's basically airborne AIDS, as close as we can make a fucking comparison here, well, yeah, anyway. So a virus is as dangerous in that sense. Not that AIDS and trying to minimise AIDS. AIDS is fucked up and it's horrible. But a virus that your body is not aware of is the most dangerous because you've got no genetic fucking
It's like when
realization.
when you go from Australia to, say, a very foreign country, like if you go to Africa or if you go to some parts of Asia, you're a lot more prone to get sick because you've never come into contact with some of these bacteria.
Exactly that. So, I mean, it's a little bit more complex than that.
Yeah, that's very like layman's terms, but like
Exactly.
if no one's ever been overseas, you're a lot more fucking prone to get sick over there.
Yep, and that's the same reason, because your body doesn't already have an immunity to these things, and that's why it's frightening. That's why AIDS was so devastating. But they didn't give a fuck about AIDS because AIDS was just gay people, and that's fucking sad. Like,
That's wild that in the fucking 80s they thought you could only get AIDS if you were gay.
no, well, the thing is, I think that's why they didn't give a fuck about AIDS, because AIDS,
let it
in
run
most
rampant.
conditions, apart from people that were intravenous drug users and things like this, it's actually quite difficult to get unless you're involved in that proclivity. You know what I mean? And they just hung the gay community out to dry on this. They couldn't give a fuck about them. It was actually Anthony Fauci that put his foot down and said, I'm fucking going to do something. So everyone that vilifies Anthony Fauci and he's like, he's a fucking pest and all this, they don't know shit. Like, you know what I mean? It's if it wasn't for him, AIDS would probably still be running rampant against the community, and that's wildly problematic. But again, white supremacy doesn't care about the other. White supremacy doesn't give a shit about fucking gay people, doesn't give a shit about black people or brown people or anybody else that's not looking like you or me. You know what I mean? That's the kicker. And that's why you get these Christian fundamentalists and all these dickheads that are like, we got to fucking maintain our power structure. And that's why they are so involved in politics and education and shit now. Because indoctrination, getting kids early and into their side of thinking, is how they're going to maintain their control. Once the control erodes, then people start doing their own shit as communities, and they've got to stop that.
Well, I think that's like as deep a dive as you can get into why you started graffiti because of your mindset. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like that 30, 40 minutes was like a perfect insight as to why you love graffiti, or you love the art of graffiti, the principle behind it.
Well, yeah, I mean, look,
obviously it's fun. Like, that's just going very deep. Like, it is just fun to get pissed with your mates and go bomb up somewhere when you're younger.
Yeah.
But like, obviously, graffiti meant a lot more to you because you seem like well, we were talking about it off camera. You probably lean a lot more to the artistry side of graffiti because you are a very good artist. Like, would you call yourself an artist or a grapher?
I was an artist before I was doing graph.
Yeah.
So how I got into graph, this is actually something we kind of ended up going on a massive tangent away from, was through some dudes that I met when I was pretty young. Now, I went to a private school, shithole. Actually, it's one of these well-respected Adelaide schools. I had a scholarship to go there, and it was fucking horrible. It was the most bloody institutionalised, horrible place you could just about go to, especially as a poor fat kid from the fucking western suburbs. You know what I mean? I was the outlier. Hard, the only dudes that got treated as bad as me were the like freshly Vietnamese kids and Cambodian kids that were refugees and bullshit. It was fucking horrible. And so I had a very sort of regimented social reality. I was going to the ice arena and hanging out and doing all that bullshit. Don't get me wrong. I had an outlet for meeting girls or whatever at that age. But when I was about 15, across the road from my mum's house, there was a deli. And they had a phone box there. And I used to skateboard out the front of my mum's house, like, just session in the street. And I kept seeing this dude rock up, to use the phone box. And he would come nearly every night. And he was, skate down the thing, use the phone box. And after a few weeks of seeing this dude, I got up enough courage. And, he had this real cool Sal Barbia skateboard. Sal Barbia was one of my favourite skateboarders. I was like, oh, bro, can I, have a look at your skateboard? I think it was out in my school uniform and shit and everything. Just, and he's a mad chiller. He's like, yeah, dude, go and have a roll and shit. I'm just talking to my girlfriend. So this is my mate, Jared. And this interaction changed my fucking life. This is one of those moments where you can look back on and be like,
that was the crux. Like,
this was the change of my fucking entire trajectory.
You might have just gotten a fucking office job otherwise.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
Well, maybe not, but I would have ended up
you wouldn't
probably a chippy like the rest of my family was. And I was already working in that capacity on and off, for my family, building houses. But But I met this dude, and after he got off the phone, we started talking, and after a fucking few interactions, a few weeks or whatever, he's like, "Oh, bro, I live around the corner. You should come around sometime." And I was young, this dude's a few years older than I am. And I was like, yeah, fuck it, all right. So these cunts live around the corner on the corner of like Lucas Street, which is, I don't know if you know Richmond well, but where I lived in Richmond back in the day, it was hood, it was hardcore. And, the area was made up of mainly old ethnics. This is the whole sort of that area of the western suburbs, Thebarton, Torrensville, Richmond, Cowndilla.
Very immigrant based.
You had a lot of old ethnic families and then ethnic kids, and a lot of their kids were a little bit older because those families come over in the 50s and 60s. So a lot of their kids were, 10, 15 years older than I was, So a lot of those dudes were like the fucking hood rats. They were like the trouble cunts. So you had them and the Richmond Rockers and, the Wogs versus Doggers fucking paradigm. And, if the street lights come on, you wanted to be at home kind of, at that time. It was a pretty bad place to be at after dark, And then as time went on, these kids, we started going to school with their little brothers and bullshit like this. So, I was going to school with, a couple of ethnic dudes that were just mad chillers, but their older brothers were like hard cunts, So we kind of all got along because we're all in the same spot, and the reality of that area at the time was there was a lot of, bad substance abuse, like drug abuse. It was very blue collar. But there was a lot of community. I knew everyone in the street. I knew everyone in fucking every street around where I was. My grandpa lived 5 streets away. My auntie lived up the road, like shit like this, And this was how that existed. We're all in it together. All the mums chain smoking around the table, fucking working out the neighbourhood problems and shit.
Like, what a time to be alive.
That fully existed, That fully existed. And so I can't remember where I was going with that, but this was sort of the zeitgeist of the hood at the time. And, I met this dude and went around to his place one night, and these motherfuckers are like listening to shit that I'd never really encountered. They're like, you heard this album? I was like, what is it? It's like Dead Kennedys, Frankenchrist and Porno for Pyros and fucking BDP. And, I just got baptism of fire. Like I walked in the door and I already knew about hip hop. Like I found hip hop accidentally. It was real weird in the 80s. Me and my mate, but seeing dudes that knew about this shit and actually were involved in this shit, these punk fucking skate dudes, like it was radical. It was like some, like a share house of the fucking Deros, what I mean? But they're rad, beautiful dudes. And don't get me wrong, when I say Deros, I mean that with the utmost love and respect. And that's where I first met Foe, like the graph writer Foe.
Yeah.
Foe was homies with these dudes. Where I first met dudes from, well-known Adelaide bands at the time, like the Kemp brothers and stuff. And, I already knew Drew Kemp because we went to school together. And I used to go around their place and fucking play with those dudes, in primary school. But where, they'd already sort of left school and we'd started, these more cultural fucking movements, which at the time we didn't think anything of it from a cultural perspective. We were ignorant to all that. But what we were creating was a culture. And so we started skateboarding together and, smoking heaps of dope and listening to fucking cool shit. And, we became really, really close. And I'm still friends with all these dudes. Like, this is my heart. Like, these are my homies, my family. And, because we're all from broken homes and shitty backgrounds and whatever, it developed into a place where when you think of support as a child, most people's support comes from the home. But none of us really had that opportunity. My mum was real violent.
So she's made a family.
So we made a family.
Yeah.
So, if I ever got in shit, like I had trouble, and I'd still to this fucking day, I wouldn't ring my mum. I'll ring one of these dudes and be like, well, this is going on. And I know that, fuck, they'll be there. I was living in Queensland and they're like, we'll see you tomorrow, style shit. It's no problem. So we'd actually developed this, mutual love and respect for each other that became unbreakable. It was... dudes I was surfing with, you were always watching out with each other. You were always looking after each other. So I've got these, maybe 10 or 12 friends in my life that we can't be broken apart, And that is the beauty of this interaction. And that's what I mean, that once I was introduced to this music and this lifestyle, this outlook, you know, a lot of people look at it and be like, hey, you wasted your fucking time. But, man, I had it made. I didn't have to worry about school anymore. I didn't have to worry about the teachers being fucking fascists. I didn't have to worry about bloody my grades. I didn't have to worry about anything because I didn't need those fucking people anymore. I was free, you know. I was out the door. And, you know, I finished school a couple of years after that, and then I was chucked out of home. And we've been bros ever since, all of us.
And you started Graph, like, so...
Oh, yeah, sorry, that's how this started. So one of the dudes that lived in this house and another dude that, you know, weirdly enough, my mum and his mum were friends, and we kind of knew each other, but we never really broed down until this house. And, you know, he's one of my best friends. We still fucking contact once a week at least. They were into graph. And like I said, I met Fo and shit there. So we had this little graph underlink going on there. There was already graph around the place, you know. And I was not necessarily ignorant to it, but I just wasn't overly interested. I couldn't really...
in the scene, you didn't...
Well...
You didn't appreciate it.
Well, we had a scene, and that was just an ancillary part of it.
Yeah.
You know, obviously, I didn't know a lot about Fo's background and shit back then. Like, you know, I've known Fo now 30 years, but back then, I knew who he was from, you know, the amount of respect and shit that he just garnered when he walked into the room. Like, he was a much-loved character, but I wasn't really aware of why that occurred, that paradigm existed. So, you know, but Syke, one of the dudes that lived in the house, and my mate Ment, Dave, I ended up living with Syke. So after I got chucked out of home, I couch surfed for about a year. Then I lived in a place with a girlfriend, and that fell apart, and I moved into another spot. And in that spot, no, that's where my girlfriend, me and her separated, and I got Syke to move in. And Syke moved in, and he was always doing these cool-ass fucking doodles, and he always had like Cobalt 60 fucking comics, and, you know, he really schooled me on graph was about. And this is about 97, 98. And I kind of knew it existed, but I didn't get it, you know. And at that time, all I wanted to do was fucking surf, skateboard, meet girls, smoke weed, drink beer. That was it. Like, I didn't give a fuck about graph, but I knew these dudes did. And I kind of started learning a bit more about it and seeing more. And because we were heavily skateboarding, you know, we were skateboarding with dudes like Ambush or, you know, Cope, Rest in Peace. Dudes that were real legit graphers too, you know. So I started... Because of the way our group was, we'd go to bands, we'd go do this, we'd go and do this, and we were just moving around through all these different scenes. And so, you know, eventually I started meeting more and more and more people that were, you know, really dedicated to this subculture. And by the late 90s, I'd started, you know, doing art because I was just mad broke, and I've painted this painting for a girl that, you know, she had to do her year 12 thing, and she goes, you know how to draw, you fucking do it, because I'd always drawn anyway. And so she paid me to make her final year 12 artwork. And I said, I'll do it for you. You got to pay me, because I was flat broke. I was living in the flat. You know, it was horrible. And you got to give me the rest of the paint. So basically this girl's year 12 art got me started making painting work and whatnot. And, you know, that was like 98. And, you know, once I started making art and getting serious about it, you know, my uni career for my science degree, they'd kicked me out of Flinders for being a rat bag. And I was looking around to just try and get our studies so I didn't have to fucking go on the dole.
Yeah.
So I went to art school. And once I started thinking about art critically, then I was like, oh, there's a lot of power to this information. So the information itself inspired me to want to reproduce it. You know, the idea, once I started understanding the nitty gritty, the back end of what makes graffiti so powerful, then I was like, oh shit, this is interesting. There's something going on here. So that's when I started, like, you know, doing a bit of graph. I mean, in the 80s and that, me and my mates had fucking little tags and just dickhead kid shit, you know. And even earlier than that, like one of my mates who's a really well-known lawyer now, I grew up with him. We did some like anti-war roller paint that we stole from his dad's shed down the creek, you know, stop the drop shit. But the real graph came sort of late 90s. And I started getting real interested in this interacting with the environment shit. And that's where, you know, it really started. And from there, like, it just, you know, I was fucking
Cascaded.
horrible. Oh, fuck, my shit was so toy, dude. Like, you know, it was awful. The early graph of mine was rubbish. It sucked.
I feel like your stuff, like your stuff now is more, I wouldn't say politically driven, but your personal like stuff and that does have like a bit of more of a meaning to it than Like you're just not writing fucking words on a piece of paper.
No, well, look, we got to try and keep the, because the graph thing is very difficult.
I'm talking more about your art.
Yeah. Well, I'll explain this what's going on there. Like, so the graph thing, because I was schooled by dudes that were heavily involved in the scene, and Adelaide had its own style, which is kind of like a tech public style. It took me a long time to develop that, and a lot of my early sort of graph stuff was dudes I knew who were known writers like Binder and Epic and shit. They would always be like, come down and paint our backgrounds, like do the carros, because I was always good at drawing fucking stupid characters and shit.
I was going to say, your characters are fucking phenomenal.
Yeah, thanks, man. So, like, I've got these dudes around me that are like, come down and do the carros between the pieces and whatnot. And, I did this a fair bit, and then I started thinking, like, I'm fucking spending all my money making these fucking dudes shit look dope. Like, I've got to get involved in this letter shit myself, So the fucking lettering, and to do good letters is a very difficult thing. Like, people just think, oh, yeah, it's easy. But if you fucking think letters are easy, then that's why your graph sucks. You know what I mean? Like, letters are very difficult. You know what I mean? Because there's such a constraint on what can be done with a letter. You got 26 symbols, and you got to make shit that is legible enough to be still considered a letter, but cool enough that it's funky.
You got to be able to, you got to be able to kind of push the boundaries of like what you can do with the letter, because a letter's always going to look exact. Like, a letter's shape is fucking always going to be the same shape. It's what you can do with the letter.
Well, it has to be, because otherwise it's an unrecognisable symbol. You start doing too much shit, and it's either becomes another letter, or
that's why
it's fucking not a letter.
The wild style can fucking confuse the fuck out of me sometimes, because I just won't be able to read it sometimes. I'll be like, oh, that's just fucking... That might as well be a hieroglyph.
I'm not massive on wild style. Like,
it's an expression of art. It's the abstract art of graffiti.
It's a movement, and it's a flow, and it's a
talent.
It's a talent, don't get me wrong. I mean, wild style to put together is not an easy thing.
It'd be a fucking nightmare. If you're good at it, it'd be a fucking nightmare.
Yeah, but it's, when things become so camouflaged, I just find that they lose their impact in that sense. You've disguised the letter. You've made it so removed from its reality of the form that it becomes a kind of suggestion of a letter, and that can be good or bad. But in a lot of cases, it's, to me personally, bad. But I come from a public background in that sense. You know what I mean? Like, the style of Adelaide was pretty public. There was a concerted effort to make your letters pretty legible.
So what do you think of people like... See, I had 2 Loco on, and we briefly discussed Banksy.
Yep.
He has no love for Banksy at all.
A lot of graphers don't.
Would you... But as an artist, because you obviously look through the lens of art a lot differently to a strict graffiti artist.
Definitely.
Because you would probably bridge the gap between grapher and artist.
Yeah.
What would you comment on his work? Because he does a lot of like cool political movement shit, and he pushes some... But he would have to work in coordinates with councils and governments. And
I don't think he does.
You don't think he does? How
don't
is
think
he?
he does.
How has no one seen that cunt, man?
Cunts have seen him. Dudes know who he is. What do I think about Banksy? Well, apart from the fact that his work is derivative for starters, he basically Jack Black Rat. And a lot of other stencil artists. The idea of making stencil art was not a Banksy invention.
Does he claim it to be?
I don't think he does.
People claim, makers claim.
I think that the general population who has zero understanding of art in general, and definitely not something as fucking locked in as graph or street art, which are 2 different things, mind you. I've got to be careful there. They think that Banksy is some fucking genius. And Banksy is a clever dude. He makes a lot of good satirical art, and it's nice, and it's fine. It's pretty safe in a lot of ways, and in some ways it's not safe. So I like to think of Banksy as on a case-by-case basis. Like when he fucking stole all those Paris Hilton albums and then put his own shit in there and then went and put them back in the record store. That's fucking amazing. Like, that to me is... that's so good. Because... he's attacking what deserves to be attacked with that. But is his shit that interesting in general? I think what Banksy does very well is he manages to make stupid people or people...
Hold that thought 1 second. I just got it 1 sec. I just need to put that on fucking charge.
Rightio. Well, I'm glad that happened because I said stupid. I'm trying not to be overly ableist with my conversation here.
We're back.
Rightio. So I think what Banksy does very well is he makes people who aren't necessarily artistically intellectual or intelligent, just very lowbrow people, which I'm not disparaging the lowbrowness because that's 90% of people, you know. But he makes them feel very smart because they get it.
Yeah.
They get art. And when art has for years been this either canonical art or modern art, which is super highbrow and exclusive, a lot of people hate art for that reason. You know, they're just like, shit's just wanker shit, you know, because they don't get it.
Yeah.
And what Banksy did very well, and why Banksy, to me, is so successful, is that he's made art that is everyman art, you know. So I can't begrudge him that. Now, his beef with Robbo, problematic, you know, so fuck that. You know, when you've got art of that caliber trying to take over the space of the real voice of the street, which is the graffiti culture, that's where you run into the problems with that stuff, and that's why many graph dudes are like, fuck Banksy. And
He has a problem with this bloke called, so I'm not familiar with
Robbo's
this.
dead, but he was a known British, like London or Bristol-based graph writer. Really respected. You know, a dude that put in a lot of work, just a straight graffiti writer. And him and Banksy got into war over cap and shit. Like, you know, dudes going over shit. So Robbo had this piece that Banksy fucking painted it out to put some shit up. That pissed Robbo off. They started getting into a spat about it. And it kind of blew up. And, you know, this is kind of where a lot of the street art graph kind of not mixing sort of stems from this same attitude that, you know, what we do, or street artists, you know, under the ideation that their art is more important or more valuable than graffiti, which is not true. You know, like the reality is, you know, you get a lot of dudes that are mural artists, you know, like myself, that have gone through this. And again, you know, our murals get hit. We kind of laugh about it, you know. Well, I do. I mean, you know, the business owner might be sad, but I'm not. I can't prevent that. I can't prevent the streets doing what the streets do. You know
There
what I mean?
is some times when those two cultures fucking overlap and it's brilliant. Like that, well, like what they did in Miami, that fucking 20-story or whatever it was sky building that those graphers orchestrated just to go bomb the fuck out of it. That was incredible.
Yeah, it's incredible. And
that was what, and they were all good pieces. Like you could tell that, and it would have been such a rush. I would have loved to know how the fuck they orchestrated that.
I don't think they necessarily did it together, because you got to remember the graph community is very segregated.
Was it over one night, or was
No,
that?
no, no, no.
Oh, right. So it was
It's just
over a
been
span
happening,
of time.
You know, and there's pieces there that got done and then got gone over. You know,
It was sick though.
So yeah, look, it's amazing. Is that building in Miami or?
I believe
LA?
it was in LA. Or LA maybe.
Yeah, right. You know, and that is the voice of the street, realistically, there. Because what you're doing there is you're fighting the system. You know, that's what's salient to me, because they've created this fucking megalithic giant phallus because they thought,
so
we're going to
good.
make so much money out of this. You know, they probably displaced people from the area to build this fucking thing, and it turned into a massive white elephant. It's a statue to failed capitalism. And then the graphers were like, this is our canvas now. It was like 5 Points. You know, the whole thing that happened with 5 Points is profoundly interesting from a sociological perspective. You know, do you know about 5 Points
No.
in New York? They had this warehouse that they'd basically let dudes come and paint from all over the world. My homie Epic, he's painted it, and, you know, it was a monument to graffiti from the worldwide. It was like this iconic thing. You go past it on the train, you see it. It was just graph to fuck. And because of the gentrification of the neighbourhood, it ended up getting bought. Now, what happened is the people that bought it ended up getting sued by the graph writers because they went and whitewashed it under the cover of darkness. They were trying to get it protected under a cultural heritage thing. So the graph, which is a part of New York's history, whether they like it or not, they were trying to use that as a reason to protect the sanctity
Yeah.
of the space. but money fucking talks. Now, you're talking about a neighborhood that was traditionally, very black, very Hispanic or Latino, lower class families and whatnot, but it's very close to Manhattan and shit. So they've wanted to fucking occupy this area and fill it up with culture vulture fucking wealthy families or whatever. So they've bought this massive property to build some bullshit on it, very much like this fucking building that got fucked up. And the city was like, look, we got to be careful here because this has been existing. People have been painting it for years and years and years, and it's a very strong part of the cultural heritage of New York. And so what the fucking developer did was pay these cunts to go in under the cover of darkness and buff the whole building. So destroyed all the work. And the dudes got together and were like, you fucking dogs. Like, they had a hold on the development because they were like trying to work out how important it was and what they needed to do. And the people whose work got buffed, or I'd say just, probably the bigger names that kind of knew the owner and whatever, and, probably mainly New York dudes who were, like down cats for the space, got together and were like, we're suing the developer. And they won.
No shit.
They won. Now, this kind of set a panic through a lot of other industries, flow-on industries from graffiti, like the street art, mural, because once building owners realised that there was a potential that they could be sued for fucking allowing work on their wall, then removing it, that kind of sent a bit of a shockwave. It kind of just simmered out. Like, you didn't really hear a lot about it afterwards, but at the time it was a real challenging thing for dudes that, make income making work in the public space. Yeah.
There's fucking just some real talented, like, if I know me personally, but I appreciate graffiti art. Like, if I had a building and I had a blank fucking wall and it was just covered like a Hosier Lane in Melbourne, just covered like head to toe in fucking dope pieces, and people could come and paint over it, and it was more just like a canvas for people to just come, and it was like that would be so dope. Like, imagine having there's this one bloke I follow on Instagram, I'd love to fucking have him on the podcast. I believe his name's Soffles.
Rightio. Russell, yep.
I
met him once or twice.
He's fucking so talented. Like, just having one of his pieces on the side of your wall, it's like having a fucking piece of art. Like,
yeah.
And it's you can't put a price on it.
No, you can't. And this is the importance. I mean, removed from even Soffles here, like, what those places represent is back to the conversation thing. So you have these places where there's a little bit of a hierarchy involved, like certain dudes, you just know, I'm not going to go over that fucking piece. Whether it's like from the 80s, just someone that, might be deceased, or someone that's got, sort of king status that's, verboten to go near. And that's something that anybody that's venturing into this fucking realm needs to understand, that even though this is a ragtag bunch of fucking bloody hood rats doing this shit.
There's an etiquette.
There's still an etiquette to it. There's certain things that are highly frowned upon to do. There's certain things that are just not on, And so spaces like this, they facilitate these conversations. They facilitate the push of style, the forward movement of stylistic invention. They facilitate these street conversations. They facilitate people meeting each other, both locally and nationally and internationally, because they become a cultural centre. And then what happens? You get cunts that fucking are interested in the culture, and they realise that this is there, and they want to buy into it and then gentrify it, and then those people get pushed out. Like has happened with, these places, like Culture Kings, you know what I mean? They fucking opened a door on the back of the lane. That's the end of that, So when capitalism gets involved, it fucks everything up. And this is always going to be the case, And people, like, I want to just make this clear that, like, a lot of people that are, looking at this conversation, they might be like, well, you're a capitalist because you fucking make money from painting walls. But I own the means of my own production. I'm not paying a kid, $12 an hour to paint my piece and then getting $5,000 and just pocketing that.
You're an artist.
I own the means of my own production. Yeah. So I could charge what the fuck I want. And that's not capitalistic in any sense because I'm not exploiting someone else's labour. You know what I mean? If I did that, if I ran a business that was like one of these arts, which is very popular now, especially like advertising agencies, they have like, this arts fucking, they have a heap of writers on their books, and they'll get money from a company. They might get 20 grand and they'll pay a dude 5 grand to go and paint the wall, and then they pocket the 15.
Yeah.
That's exploitative. And that's fucked. You know, I don't care what anyone says. And if, you know, that's not how these cultures need to work. You know what I mean? Well, we're the authors of our own demise here. So anybody that doesn't understand that paradigm needs to really sort of consider that just because I get paid to paint a wall doesn't mean that that's an exploitative model. You know, that's a skill set that I've developed. And if people want to pay me for it, then fuck, I'd rather do that than go and put chips in a bag for 8 hours a day and then just sneak out on the weekend and paint a wall. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's just the way that is. And I don't begrudge anyone having a blue-collar job. Of course not. I support those people fully. But you've got to understand that there is a very important distinction that needs to be made.
Well, that was a fucking good... Like, I like when I leave a podcast, I'm like, oh, fuck, that's not the conversation I thought I was going to have today. But I fucking really appreciate you coming on. If anyone wants to follow his work, it's J2SKE.
Yep.
On Instagram. Get a fucking painting from him. Get him to do something. He's going to charge you for it because he can. But I do appreciate you coming on, and it was very nice meeting you.
I might not charge you for it, but it depends.
It depends. Depends who you are. Depends what the design is.
That's all right.
Easy, bro.
No worries, man. Thank you very much.
Good to meet you.
Definitely.